Welcome to the EVready podcast, featuring industry leaders and their perspectives on electrification, hosted by EVready Energy. Hey everybody, welcome to the EVready podcast. My name is Chris Nihan, and I am grateful to have Dawn Neville joining the podcast today, Manager of Electric Transportation for PSE&G, the electric utility in New Jersey, one of the electric utilities in New Jersey. And she's here to talk a little bit about the electric utility and how the utility is working with EV charging. So Dawn, thank you so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Chris. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So I'm gonna get it kicked off with one of the main questions that I get all the time from people is the impact on the electric grid. So what's the story about the impact of EVs in the grid? What kind of issues does it create for utilities? How might that affect ratepayers, and what types of programs are being created to assist in solving the utility grid problem tied to EV?
Excellent question, Chris. 3/4 of my job, if not more, is forecasting the impact of EV load growth for us to manage appropriately on our distribution grid system. So it is a growing load that's added. There's two types of loads with the passenger cars. There's a lot of small load sources that add up quickly. And then with trucks and buses, there's a discrete number of very large load requests. So the two are, different in terms of grid growth and then energy usage. One of the things we do is continuously forecast what we think the load growth will be for EV adoption. There are other load sources, not to mention the least of which, of course, is the data centers that people are talking about. But as a utility, we look at all of the load growth. We look at historic trends. We look at future trends. And we use that to develop our 15-year capital plan, in which there are, I think it's 60 or more stations dedicated to managing the EV load growth, right? So we're working on that. What are the programs we have to do that most effectively and efficiently? We have an electric vehicle program where we help with the make-ready costs. That's the cost of installation, right? On both sides of the meter, we go up to the charger stub. So we can help with the transformer wires and poles, and we can help with the switchgear, panel, conduits, and whatnot up to the charger stub. That gets us at the table right at the beginning. So we can effectively design the grid and the growth that's needed to manage that the grid installations that are needed to manage that load growth as effectively as possible. We also have a program that incentivizes managed charging. That's a benefit of all. EV charging is one of those rare loads that can often, most cases, be discretionary during what times you charge. So if we can promote off-peak charging, which our program does, we're over 90% of our charging is off-peak, then we can help minimize the effect of the impact on grid.
Can you talk to me about that? Like, what is the incentive in the service territory to promote off-peak charging?
So for the residential customers, if they have a level 2 smart charger and they share their data with us, we take that data and we calculate what is in effect a time of use rate for their EV charging. And then we give them a 1-month lag credit that if they stay off peak, if they're at 100% off peak, they will get a 50+% discount on the cost of their EV charging, right? But it is have a sort of an off peak minus on peak thing. So that's the maximum discount. It's a great discount that we offer.
Is there anything on, and by the way, I love that it's on the residential side because as we know, like once you residentially charge your car, I should say, it's hard to go back to the public fueling life. But related to commercial charging, is there any incentive right now tied to off-peak charging on the commercial side?
So right now, the way our rates are structured, it's an incentive in and of itself because we have capacity and transmission obligations that impact your price. It's a little bit difficult in terms of a local supercharger station because they don't really have the discretion of who pulls up when. We're still working on trying to develop a rate that is acceptable to our utility commission, our ratepayer advocate, and the EVSD community and the utilities themselves. It's still an ongoing discussion and design. We're in a second year of a 2-year pilot for DCFC rates. So it's a work in progress.
Yeah, totally. And I just want to like draw it back to this, like to put it in layman's terms for folks that are listening. The electric utility grid is like a living organism. And so when we're talking about peak and off-peak charging, the goal is to flatten the load of the electric grid so that it is more resilient for everybody, so that it costs less, it is more sustainable. And I think that's why what Dawn and the folks at PSEG are doing is so important by creating these off-peak charging costs. It's flattening the load of the grid. And for their ratepayers, it's advancing the electric grid in the direction that it needs to for EVs to proliferate over the next 30 years, let's call it. And another piece of taking care of the living organism that is the electric grid is advancement of demand response. And so like if you could just kind of give like a quick understanding to everyone of what does demand response mean? Why does it exist? And where is that going for PSEG?
Yeah, so PSE&G just launched two demand response programs this summer. But in a nutshell, at a high level, demand response is partnering with our customers so that we all try to dampen the usage at what we call coincident peak. So coincident peak is those times that the entire ISO, the entire transmission operator, has the highest peak. When are they? We don't know exactly, but they're going to be approximately 4 to 9 p.m. in a heat wave in the summer, right? So
Yeah.
we picked the 5 top peak windows after the fact, but if there's a heat wave, it's going to happen, right? Like that, those are the high picture. People are running their air conditioner at home, but offices are still running their air conditioners. It's a heat wave. The demand is very high across the whole system. So a demand response program is one that you hopefully voluntary, not all are voluntary, ours is, voluntarily participate in, where you are given some sort of incentive, usually a fee to participate plus a reward after each incident, where you offer to lower your usage in those windows, right? So if we have 3 days or more of a heat wave, we are going to send a signal to the customers that voluntarily signed up saying, hey, can you please lower your usage from, and they'll give you a time window, and it's usually 4 to 9 p.m., but it could move a little. And so if you lower your thermostat, not lower the temperature, you raise the temperature on your thermostat, so you lower your air conditioner usage by a few degrees. Everybody does that. The entire system has just that little bit more headroom, a little bit more breathing space to manage that critical peak.
And so just for context for folks, like the challenge for EV charging is you might have a building that has 50 kilowatt peak load, as Don expressed. And if you put in a few fast chargers, that peak load can go from 50 kilowatts to 300 kilowatts. And so the beauty of demand response, if you're a customer of the electric utility, is before you were only paying the electric utility. But what they're doing is they're getting smart, and they're utilizing your load to lessen your load at certain times where you can actually get paid back by the utility, which, Don, in my opinion, is like the most fascinating part of the United States electric grid and where we're going. And with capacity costs going up, especially within, PJM, I think that's probably one of the main reasons why, you guys have opened up new demand response programs, and excited to see customers participate in it. If people wanted to learn more about those programs, where would they go?
So we have our website is pseg.com. If you /EV, you'll get right to my EV program page. There's also energy efficiency demand response. We can send you the links directly to the program. There's a QR code we can send you. People can just snap that and go right to those programs. But they're really exciting, and I think it's again, it's a cooperative, collaborative relationship between the customers and the EDC, the electric distribution company.
Thanks for talking about that. So my next question for you is related to, it's kind of the same topic. It's like the utility's perspective on EV demand. So what is the utility perspective on true demand for EVs, kind of compared to, what we see out there, what we hear about? Jim Farley recently expressed lack of consumer demand tied to the interest in EVs at the moment. But I'd love to hear from PSEG what your perspective is on the growth of EVs, not just in your territory, but kind of like, where you think things are going across the United States.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with the fact that I'm an engineer. I'm numbers driven. I'm analytically driven. So I look at the data of actual registrations, and I can tell you that it's still growing, especially in New Jersey, but nationwide as well. I look at both. We did just get the data through June, right? We get 6-month increments from the NJDP, the Department of Environmental Protection. And we grew again in the first half of 2025, but we grew at a slower year over year rate. So what does that mean? Adoption is still increasing. It's just increasing at a slower rate than it used to be increasing. It's hard to kind of say that. It's a catch-22 in a way. But we're, as a country, past what's known as the tipping point, right? We watch other countries, we watch other states like California. And once you get past that tipping point of 5% of new car sales, adoption seems to sort of happen naturally. We're at 12 or 14% in New Jersey. I think it's 14% last year of new car sales are electric. So I'm responsible for making sure we give you, not me personally, PSE&G as a whole, I have a small part in that, giving safe, reliable service to our customers, right? So I have to plan for the adoption. I do that analytically as an engineer looking at real data. But what we want to do is help people who want to go electric. Ultimately, we've got data that shows it's cheaper to own an electric vehicle after 3 to 5 year period. So if you want to save money in that manner, we want to help you do that while we effectively manage the load growth the best possible way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. With EPA standards in place, it's kind of impossible not to go towards EV. And then also, with China and Europe being so aggressive for OEMs, it's going to be hard for them, even if they wanted to do gas longer term, it's going to be hard to build both vehicles unless they start doing it regionally, which would just be like an incredible challenge. So I guess my next question for you is if if demand is strong, which I do agree with you, it's strong. It's not, that might not be how it feels when you watch the news, but like you said, it's still growing. It's just growing more slowly. Why do you think that uh, you know dealerships might be having problems or a perceived problem selling EVs? Why do you think that the perception is that demand is weak?
So I can't really speak to car sales. I'm not in that field. I buy a car very infrequently, so I have very limited experience personally. What I can tell you is change is hard for a lot of people. It's hard for me to say that because I love change, but very few people are like me. Change is something that is difficult for people. So going electric can be difficult for the individual driver, right? It can be somewhat scary. There's range anxiety. There's a lack of understanding of how things work. And it's very common as an individual driver to think of your fueling the way you currently fuel your gas car, your ICE car, right? So it doesn't work that way. It's completely different. It's a mind shift. I think that once people go electric, they quickly come to love it. It's not something people 2-3 months in really love it. And then they hear their neighbor loves it. So then they try it. And I think that might be more what I can speak to is the resistance to change and the lack of understanding, because you do need to learn new things. You need to learn state of charge, which is how full is your battery, right? In a way, you need to learn to plan your charging. But on the other hand, you charge at home most of the time.
Yeah, yeah, yep. And like I'm gonna ask you to go like a little bit more like 30,000 foot here, but like tied to like unsolved problems within transportations. Like, what do you perceive to be the biggest challenges at this moment in time, not related to like the electric utility, but more about what asks that you might have for market participants? That could be different types of folks. It could be automotive manufacturers. It can be the charge points or the EV Connects or the Blinks of the world, and obviously the dozens of others that are constantly entering the market right now, and integrators such as EVready, contractors, ESCOs. What do you think the biggest challenges are?
So for me, the next big frontier is medium heavy duty trucks and buses, right? I think with cars, we're getting there. We not only have CCS, we also have NACS right now. And we're getting to where it's non-proprietary charging technology that's universal, right? That took a while to get there, right? Cars have been coming and going for a good 10 years or more, and we're finally getting to universal charging. I'd like to take those lessons learned into the trucks and buses and the medium heavy duty sector. Let's get together. Let's get the OEMs and the EVSEs and the consultants and the engineers and the electric companies all together and work on non-proprietary technology that's integratable. Integration is key. If you have a truck that doesn't integrate with this charger but does with that, we need to be effective and efficient at the rollout from the start. And I think if we all collaborate together, I love solving complex problems. And this is, a complex problem that we're facing. And if we can all get together and work in industry working groups and things like that, I think that's the best call to action.
So the state regulators that are out there that are working with the electric utilities, would you define how they're working with you as asking you to accelerate electrification or react to things that are happening in the marketplace?
We're really lucky in New Jersey. We have a really cooperative working relationship amongst the different state entities and the utilities. So we meet monthly with the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, the Board of Public Utilities, which is our utility commission, and the 4 joint electric utilities from New Jersey. And we make sure that we are collaborative, that we are stacking any grants that can be stacked together to help customers in the most efficient and effective manner, that we are looking at things like non-proprietary technology and how can we improve and how can we make this more universal to everyone? How can we make sure we don't have what has been defined in New Jersey as an area of last resort? How can we make sure we don't have a charging desert, right? How can we make sure that the installations are most effective and efficient, not just from the grid aspect, but from the driver perspective as well?
Cool, cool. And in terms of like questions and requests from some of your customers, and like maybe they're differentiated by customer type, but what types of new requests or questions do your customers have? And I'm thinking like maybe fleet customers think a little bit different than municipalities versus like maybe workplace locations, but what are people asking?
Well, for starters, we're excited because in the last 10 to 12 months, we've started to get a lot of multi-unit dwelling applications. And I think that is a sector that needs more charging, right? If you live in a multi-unit dwelling or a multifamily building, oftentimes charging it at home isn't available to you. So we're excited that our program has seen an uptick in that participation. We've collaborated with property developers, property management companies, and real estate firms in order to try and get that program moving. It took a few years to get going, but now it's going really well. The medium heavy duty sector with the fleet customers. So in New Jersey, they think light duty fleet vehicles equals a medium load request. So it goes into the medium sector. But with those, one of the big asks and why we, again, I believe need to be at the table early is the initial idea that people think they need is one fast charger per vehicle or more power, faster, capability. And honestly, it behooves us all if you more effectively design your charging needs around your duty cycles. You might not need maybe one supercharger to feel more comfortable, but you could probably survive sharing level 2 chargers across different light duty fleet vehicles. Or charging your truck when it's not driving, you have longer time than you think, right? Things like that. That's not true for every use case, of course. There's certainly, Amazon vans running constantly as an example. But I think as long as we try to design the right charging size and not over design, that's a huge aspect that we see our customers asking for help from us.
So totally agree with you. Like couldn't agree with you more. I think having like the right consultant to do the math on technical vehicle capabilities, charger capabilities, business operation needs, and then how to manage that is obviously critical. How do you feel like just in terms of the overall market, do you feel like that's like a gap where customers need more of that assistance or do you feel like integrators within the industry are getting good at that?
I think that there are integrators that are good at that. I think customers don't know that maybe they don't know they need it, or maybe they don't realize they would really greatly benefit from it. So we did put in a proposal in February to the state, and in it, it's that we could provide technical assistance to the customers. We would do that through consulting agreements, but we can get that entry level relationship built between a consultant and the customer so that they can look at their duty cycle and really most effectively design their charging needs.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense to me. And I know you mentioned at the beginning, this is really my last question. You mentioned like demand charges and that you have a public DC rate. Can you talk a little bit about demand charges and kind of where they stand, the challenge, what they are, the challenge that they present, and what PSEG is doing to solve that problem within the different use cases that may exist?
Yeah, the challenge with demand charges, first off, I don't have a PhD in rate technology, so I only know it just so much and how it causes some, pain points to our customers, right? But we are a state with third-party supply, competition. So for us, there's a once a year annual BGS auction, basic generation supply auction, and that sets our price. And it's a pass through. We literally pass that through. The fact that it impacts charging stations is because oftentimes charging stations don't have a solid, steady use. So if you're a McDonald's or a factory or a warehouse that has a solid, steady use, those demand charges are divided across that, ample usage. With a DCFC charging station, as an example, cars come and go, intermittent, and especially when it's a new station and they don't know it's there and it doesn't have high utilization yet, those effective charges are divided by a smaller denominator, right? A smaller amount of usage. So they effectively cause a high unit price. So what is the challenge? The challenge is working together with the Utility Commission and the ratepayer advocate and the EVSE companies and the electric companies to try and come up with a way to do more effective cost sharing, some sort of way to make that use case more effective to help promote public charging installation.
Yeah. And Don, I don't know if you're aware of this, but that's actually primarily what our technology does too, is we hide measured charging demand behind building demand to flatten that load. So something I'm really passionate about, and just thank you for speaking to it. It's like I think it's a challenge in the industry, but it's a challenge that can be solved with a little bit of strategy. And actually, we're working with some of your customers in your territory right now to do it. So thank you so much
I would
for
welcome,
taking.
Chris, I would
Yeah.
welcome an offline conversation after this podcast is over to dive into that in more detail. So
Good. We'll do it. Don, thank you so much for taking the time and talking about EV and what the utility is doing. Obviously, PSEG is one of the most forward-thinking utilities in the United States tied to this. And yeah, I think you're doing a great job and look forward to continuing to work together.
thank you again for having me, Chris.
Awesome.